Yes, I was going to say we had a more colorful title here when we told our story, and Vebjørn said, well, this is a tank full of paradoxes. And we're going to take you through that story, starting with a very simple policy idea, which looks very nice. Here is the vision, a quote from NRK Trøndelag, translated on Google Translation. The big vision is very simple. It's a new opportunity for forest industry to produce biofuel. Remember Norwegian forest industry as a lot of other forest industry firms in the Nordic countries were troubled by a vanishing paper market. People were going digital, and Asiatic production got too competitive. So they had to look for something else, and here was suddenly the solution. In addition, there was a need for greening transport. Norway, of course, is desperately searching for greening of something. Most other countries can green their energy system. We cannot, because it's already so green, except for the oil. That's another matter. That's offshore. That's offshore. Now, the interesting thing is, this seemed like a success story in the beginning. And here are some very nice curves. As you see, the red curve goes up all the time. This is the volume of biofuel bought in the Norwegian market. And the yellow line, the upper yellow line, is the mandatory sales requirements. So not only did people fulfill the mandatory sales requirements that were going up all the time, but they actually overfulfilled it. These were the professional transporters that wanted to have a green profile. So if you want to drive for IKEA, you probably have to have a green, clean profile. But there was a problem. It's all about palm oil. You see, it's firstly, this consumption was imported. So the biofuels, the feedstocks were imported. Furthermore, they were also a bit problematic. Palm oil was not quite okay. And of course, all the grapeseed, the blue line, comes from abroad. Knut?
So then something happened. There was a large public mobilization against palm oil. This banner says, "Stop Norwegian greenwashing." This just shows the amount of the volume of articles in Norwegian print newspapers, and you can see a massive increase in 2015, 16 and 17. This is a continuation from the curve Atle showed, which shows that most of the fuel retailers voluntarily chose to stop selling palm oil-based biodiesel, which led to a massive decrease, of course, in biofuel sales, which in turn had this impact on this. So there was a massive decrease in total sales as well. They're still not well above, but they're still slightly above the mandatory sales requirement. But there was a massive decrease nevertheless. This intensified the current policy focus towards advanced biofuels, and which this debate and the problem with palm oil was not specific to Norway. So the Norwegian regulation to a large extent came through the EU. And what is advanced biofuels, well, you may ask? The full definition is very long and complex, but put simply, it's waste and it's not competing with food. That's the simple definition. So the question is, will advanced biodiesel solve the problems with sustainability? And the short answer is only if the price is right, because there is very strong competition both in the fuel retail sector and among the professional transporters that Atle mentioned. So price is essential. So there are two price regimes here, so just stick with me. This is for biofuels sold in order to meet the mandatory sales requirements. So here the green one, the blue one is diesel, fossil diesel, which is still the cheapest. The orange one is conventional biodiesel, which is typically made from food crops. The light gray one is advanced biodiesel, which is waste-based and not competes with food, but it is not forest-based, it's non-forest-based. And then the black one is where it gets interesting, because this is double-counted advanced biofuels, which you can see is competing with the conventional. So here the policy seems to have an effect. This, by the way, this is international market prices plus Norwegian tax policy. And then the very high light green column is forest-based, and then the dark green is double-counted forest-based. And you may ask what is double counting? Put very simply, it allows you, if you as a retailer sell advanced biodiesel, you may count it twice towards meeting the mandatory sales requirement, whereas conventional you may only count once. That's put very, very simply. Now, right. So the other story, the other regime is for regulation which is put in place to stimulate sales above the mandatory sales requirement, which Atle mentioned, which is for the professional transporters. And here you can see that conventional biofuel is the cheapest, followed by advanced, followed by fossil diesel, followed by forest. So to answer the question, will advanced biodiesel solve the problems with sustainability? For meeting the sales requirements, yes, it may, or there is some chance that it will at least. For stimulating sales above, that's more of a challenge. And for the Norwegian forestry or for forest-based biofuels, it's extremely challenging. Nevertheless, there are a lot of biofuel production plants being planned, both in traditional forestry companies such as UPM and Borregaard, but perhaps more interestingly in joint ventures with fuel retailers and refiners. So there is still some hope that this can help drive down the learning curves and reduce costs also for forest-based.
Okay, and then taking a slightly wider perspective, of course, in the next round, biofuel will have to compete with other greening strategies. And we all know the Norwegian electric car market, which is taking off. I think it's growing by a factor of 40%. This is what I saw per year from Transportøkonomisk Institute. What is that? The Institute of Transport Economics. I'm probably half right in this translation. So there is a window of opportunity here, which is kind of diminishing until the electrification, so to speak, takes the whole market segment in Norway. And the question is, can forest-based biofuel in that time period get cheap enough through innovation? It's hard to believe, but there are these investments. So this is a kind of the paradox thing. It is a rather paradoxical situation. The big idea was, of course, for biofuel to develop and to have a learning process whereby prices got cheaper and cheaper by targeting the markets in the sheltered sectors. This is where the car industry, private cars, of course, are under public control. You control the taxation, you can manage the incentives, and you can even make things mandatory. Then you have the bus transport market, which is partly competitive, but partly also on public contracts. And the idea was to develop the biofuel technology so that you get costs coming down, meeting the, let's say, the diesel costs here. And then to develop competitive offers to these sectors, which are really the sectors that would need biofuel, particularly the aviation sector, which cannot carry as yet the heavy load of batteries and go electric. There are dreams of getting there, but this is a few decades at least away until you can get it commercial. And the long-distance transport by ships which need very powerful enginery and where biofuel was seen to have a role. The problem is, of course, that when you come to these sectors, you are without domestic public control of the market conditions. So it's very hard without getting international agreements, and they never come about because it's a very, very hard negotiation to gather the shipping communities around the world and the aviation communities behind a common policy. So if we cannot drive down the prices of biofuel or forest-based biofuel, we're not going to be able to target these sectors where it's really needed. And I suspect palm oil is going to be very much in demand because palm oil and a number of other conventional biofuels and also some of the new advanced have a chance to cater for this market.
And there is an ongoing debate also about whether there is good palm oil and bad palm oil, or whether it's possible to source sustainable palm oil. So it's not necessarily completely out. That's an ongoing discussion.
There seems to be in Norway a kind of a protectionistic twist also, I would say, to this debate. We tend to say it's bad all over. Anyway, in the meantime, forest industry has recovered some of it at least and is making very good money out of other high-value products, like hygiene articles for SCA has now changed its name and is making good money out of it. Labels is another product which is giving big money to billing to other firms. So perhaps the biofuel idea for forest industry was not the saving grace that politicians in Trøndelag thought they needed. Even Norske Skog, I think, is coming out of the ditches when they got rid of their debt. They can actually be quite productive. So that's the paradoxical story of biofuel. The jury is still out, some people would say, but the window of opportunity, I think, is shrinking, and in the meantime, the race for other technologies is going on. Hydrogen, of course, is another competing technology, which is still rather expensive. Okay, that was our story, 2 minutes and 17 seconds to go.